Hello, welcome to Dungeon Dwellers Podcast. I'm your host, Justin. Today we're reviewing Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which collects two stories. One by um, Brian Augustyn. He writes both of them, with art by Mike Mignola. And this second story is called Master of the Future, with the artist Eduardo Barreto. So Gotham by Gaslight is basically retells the Batman origin story, which I'm fucking sick of them constantly rebooting, retelling the Batman story. But basically they redo the Batman story in late 19th century, 1888, or is it 88 or 89? 89. They because of there's no movie theaters in the 1800s, obviously. Um, Batman parents die by stagecoach robbery. Um, which comes back in later in the story. Like both stories are very heavily, in my opinion, inspired by Tim Burton's movie Batman 1989, which stars Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson as the Joker. You also have what's his name? Oh my god, what's the guy's name from Star Wars who played Lando? Oh my god. Well, that's not important right now. That's not important. So it's they basically copied a major plot point from that movie, where you have this new villain. Well, sorry, they take an old villain and then they incorporate into the Batman mythos. You find out that also there's going to be spoilers in this review. So if you don't want to be spoiled, my rating is pretty much a 6 out of 10. So now we're going to get on to spoilers. So the first story is basically Batman versus Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper shows up in Gotham the same time as Batman starts his career, where he has been in Europe, studying with psychologists, studying with detectives, famous detectives. You don't really see any of the detectives. I guess they realized that Sherlock Holmes wasn't real, so they couldn't use Sherlock Holmes. But who they do have is Sigmund Freud, which I'm more of a Carl Jung guy. Check out his book, The Collective Unconscious, though it's out of print. So you can only get the commentaries by other people, which sucks in my opinion. Yeah, so you find out Jack the Ripper is basically the one who killed Bruce Wayne's parents, which is very dumb in my opinion. But that it also explains how Jack the Ripper knew that Batman was Bruce Wayne, and that's why he framed Bruce Wayne. Which Bruce Wayne is in his. There's a point when he's arrested and he's in his jail cell. He's friends with Jim Gordon for some reason, who's not police commissioner yet, but he's still major up in the police. Yeah, so Jim gets him all the files that Gotham has on Jack the Ripper, and he's able to figure out who Jack the Ripper is on the last day before he gets hanged. Which, wow. Yeah, so I would say that this isn't Mike Mignola's finest art. If you compare it with his old stuff, yeah, he kind of. I would say the people here are drawn a lot better, a lot crisper and cleaner than his old works, because if you looked at his old works, he draws people kind of ugly, very blocky, but at least it was very stylized. You have like very heavily inked lines and shading. This is not as good as that in my opinion, but I don't know, it's still good. Aesthetically, the gothic atmosphere, the noir aesthetics look great. Which, in my criticism for the second story, they pretty much lose the gothic and noir background. It's like in the second story, it's a lot more colorful. Like even the build, and like you can explain that away because it takes place during the day. They're gonna have like a fair, but like if you look at the buildings and shit, even the buildings are super colorful. It's like where like in the first story, it's like there's a lot of dark, like there's a lot of browns and grays, you know, like befitting like a gothic story. But like here, it's like they completely lose the plot. It's like, what the did you guys not know you were like you're doing like a gothic story? Like, Jesus. Like I honestly hated the second story. The story for the story for this second issue is that they're gonna have this fair. Some guy shows up, some French. I don't know if he's a Francophile or he's actually French. His name's like Alexander Leroy, who shows up, tells them, hand over the city to me or I'm gonna destroy it. And he has this airship with this solar lens thing where I guess it takes the sun's light and creates this fucking heat beam of death where like he burns down like part of the city at the end of the story. Batman shows up. They have a huge epic fight on the Zeppelin. Honestly, that epic fight at the end saves this piece of shit story. And because like I said sorry, like I said in the first take, which you didn't hear, the art's really good, but the story and the writing's not very good. And like the writer pretty much shows off like how liberal he is. Like they're having like a town meeting, right, about the fair, and this guy shows up who runs like a Wild West show. The guy, the mayor, who used to be the police commissioner before Jim Gordon took over the role in the second story, gives him this response: "Certainly, the fine city of Gotham means you no insult, Mr. Cody. Your fame and reputation precede you, but this exposition is a celebration of this nature's future, not its barbaric past." So he's demonizing like the Wild West, which like Wild West was like pretty bad, but like I'm guessing it has more to do with not so much the Civil War and the other shit, but more to do with wait, when did the Civil War happen again? Whatever. Like you can tell it's like it's about the Indians being massacred, right? Which like the whole thing about the Indians, it was more a response to they were opposed to the railroads. Which if you didn't have the fucking railroads, retard, like America, the railroads apply infrastructure to America, a means to like send mass resources and people across the nation where it was needed, so to build up the infrastructure, to build up the country. And if it wasn't for the railroads, the Wild West and the pioneering days of America would have lasted a lot fucking longer if it wasn't for the railroads. So you're a fucking idiot, Brian Augustyn. no offense, but it's like you clearly went to a liberal college where they pretty much cultural Marxist your ass, your ass, dude. Read Death of the West by Pat Buchanan, viewers. But yeah, that I don't know. That scene really pissed me off. Not that I'm a huge fan of Wild West shows. I do love westerns. I should mention that I love fucking westerns. But yeah, that to me was so fucking retarded. It's like, dude, like this book, like almost like this book is lucky I gave it a 6 out of 10 because the only good thing about this book is the Mike Mignola art. Everything else sucks pretty much, except for the second story where you have the epic fight on the Zeppelin. And though one of my problems I would have to say with the aesthetics, if I do have one, besides from the fact that the second issue forgot it's supposed to be a gothic noir story, is that Batman's costume, because he doesn't have the black paint, around his eyes, which bothers me. It leads to somebody figuring out who he is. Like, he has a girlfriend character in here called Julie. She sees his face once and is able to figure out it's Bruce Wayne. And thankfully, she didn't spurt the fuck out and dox his ass right away like the Petonian's girlfriend did in like Irredeemable, which if you haven't saw the review, check that out. Yeah, so like, yeah, this is a 6 out of 10. I don't really recommend it. I haven't seen the Batman Gotham by Gaslight animated movie, but I'm sure it's okay. But you know, it does, like, you can't even. I saw like footage of that. You can't even tell. Like, they obviously didn't go with Mike Mignola's art style, which is the best thing of this, you know, gothic 1800s Batman. So yeah, I don't know. My next review is going to be Chainsaw Man. It's going to be our first manga that we review on this channel. Alright, peace.